Welcome to New Ways, New Habits podcast, hosted by change behaviour experts T3 and Kiddy & Partners.
And if you don't know who we are, we offer leadership and behavioural change products and services to multinational companies, large public sector organisations and SMEs within the UK and globally.
Hi, welcome to our podcast on the future of leadership. I'm Lauren Newton.
And I am Charlotte Forsblad.
So we're both chartered occupational psychologists and we're experts in leadership development and selection. We spend most of our time working with businesses to shape what they need from their leaders to drive business success and helping their leaders to identify their priority strengths and development needs in order to optimise their performance. Today, we're going to be talking about our research into the challenges organisations are currently facing and what this means for leaders.
And really, it's never been more important for businesses to be future focused. We know that future prepared firms have outperformed average firms recently with 33% higher profitability and 200% higher market capitalisation growth. So businesses and their leaders need to be driving forward, predicting and understanding what their future will look like.
So in the session today, we're going to keep it quite short and we're going to focus on what we feel are the most important things, the most important challenges and what this means. We know ourselves as working parents that keeping abreast of the current challenges impacting leaders can be really tricky.
So this podcast series is in two parts. Firstly, we're going to give you an overview of challenges facing leaders at the moment and in the future. And we're also going to give you an overview of the three pillars of leadership behaviours we've defined in our Future of Leadership model. We'll then deep dive into the first, and the second podcast will cover the other two. Sure. So we conducted a future of research project. In doing so, we did a systematic literature review of everything that was out there. We interviewed leadership experts and top leaders from across the globe and across different industries. So we involved financial services, retail, FMCG, construction, technology, energy, law. And from these interviews, we extracted critical themes of challenges and behaviours that leaders need to be demonstrating to overcome these challenges. We then pulled these into a survey and went out to over 500 people at different levels within organisations to find out what they thought of their leaders and what they wanted from them as a really important other perspective. We ultimately found that the themes in terms of challenges businesses are facing and leadership behaviours that they need to see are really consistent across geographies and sectors. And it enabled us to quite easily and quite quickly pull together our new model of leadership and understand what leaders need to demonstrate to move forward in what is ultimately a highly digitised, fast-paced, remote working world. So let's bring to life some of the challenges for you first that we found. We know that shifting societal values are really affecting organisations. What we mean by that is ultimately what's important to people, with consumers and employees ultimately supporting organisations that are truly purpose-driven more than other organisations.
That's really interesting. And I know one of the things that I hear a lot about is sort of on top of the societal values piece, just the increasingly complex workforce dynamics that are facing organisations. So, having 5 generations in the workforce and needing to attract people and retain people, but uniting those people who ultimately want different things from, the people that still want the job for life and that's what they respect to those that are career multitaskers. Things like the traditional career path being no more, and ultimately different generations wanting different things from work and from their careers. And also with that, issues that then brings in terms of collaboration. So people struggling to ultimately connect with each other and collaborate because they don't have that shared sense of what they want from work and difficulties in that. So hearing very much that being a challenge for organisations that are very much needing to get people to work together who are quite different, and leaders needing to obviously be quite skilled in doing that. And kind of spanning that societal values piece as well as the workforce dynamics, we obviously know that workforce practices are changing, and we've had the increase remote working, hybrid working versus office working. In a recent US survey, I was reading that 13% of the workforce was now work from home, with 28% hybrid and 59% on site. So you see that's definitely a shift from where it was, prior to COVID. But also within that people want to be working remotely on occasion. And 98% of the people responding to that survey would quite like that flexibility in that work. So we know that people are going to be demanding that as they enter the workforce, and people within the workforce really valuing that flexibility.
Yes, actually a very complex people environment for leaders to be operating in terms of what their employees want from them and want for their careers, and also their consumers as well. And I know we heard from one of our colleagues in a previous podcast that 59% of employees are currently quietly quitting. So engagement issues arising from some of these challenges as well that leaders are having to navigate. And another slightly separate challenge leaders facing is the complexity of their context and their environment. And to bring some of that to life for you, we've got a very complex geopolitical situation at the moment. So whether that be sanctions, recessions, tensions on the supply chain from the Ukraine war and COVID, and then looking forward, 2024 being a year for elections, with 54% of the global population affected by elections, and that therefore means 60% of GDP, which could ultimately impact the way that the world does business. And so businesses are really needing to build geopolitical considerations into their strategies, and de-risk their global supply chains more than they ever have before.
And if that wasn't enough, we also hear, I guess, the pace of change and how quickly things are changing within the world, within organisations, and leaders needing to be able to navigate that. And this is particularly the case with tech and data. We know there's going to be a huge shift in terms of AI at the moment, supporting in more of an advisory capacity, to ultimately shifting to making decisions within organisations and supporting in different ways. In a recent survey, 95% of UK executives agreed that leveraging an AI as an ecosystem, so one that can make those decisions for them, is certainly a significant opportunity for them in the next 3 years, as something they want to be focusing on and want to be embracing. And that, of course, comes with its challenges of how to do that, in particular for leaders who are of a certain age, a certain generation, who are not as technology enabled as those that are entering the workforce. They're needing to ultimately draw on the expertise of others. So no more are they the experts in what they're doing, but they're needing to lead experts in a very different way. And we see that as again, as a challenge for people, as alongside people really embracing technology. And there's been a lot of skepticism in terms of what technology can do for us within organisations. And we certainly see people now accepting and embracing some of that in terms of how it can support them. And that belief now that rather than technology meaning that jobs will become obsolete, it will actually create jobs and hopefully create more than those it can replace. So certainly people embracing technology. So with that pace of change around technology is very much expected to accelerate much more. So I think that's some of the trends and some of the challenges that we're seeing. Charlotte, what do you think this all means for leaders?
I think it's a good question. What's the silver bullet answer for leaders to navigate this increasingly complex world? Well, we found three main consistent leadership themes that we want to now bring to life for you. So we found three consistent themes that we want to bring to life across the rest of this podcast and the next podcast around what is most important for leaders moving forward. The first is being purposeful. and purpose-driven leadership. So what do we mean by that? We mean leaders must create a meaningful purpose to inspire and align others and ultimately drive long-term business growth against this. To do so, they'll need a strong awareness of their internal and external environment, and the ability to communicate it really engagingly. So that's purpose-led leadership. The second is to lead with agility. So operating in increasingly uncertain and fast-moving environments is the way forward, and leaders must have a strong drive to learn, continually improve, but also be able to perform under pressure with personal agility, so making strong judgments when they might be in uncertain or ambiguous situations, and involving other people to complement their knowledge or skill sets and have the ability to really drive forward and accelerate change in their businesses. And the final is how leaders manage people and the importance of inclusive leadership, being able to create trust, engagement, and loyalty in an increasingly virtual world. Leaders need to collaborate across borders, whether that be geographical, functional, generational, or otherwise, and to create a one team, one business mindset, bringing high performing teams together and empowering people to deliver for them. So these ultimately are the three critical pillars of Kiddy's leadership model. And today we want to focus on purpose.
Brilliant, thanks, Charlotte. So tell us a little bit more about purpose and what do you mean by purpose? We hear that so much within articles, within other people talking about purpose. So really keen to bring to life what we mean by that.
Yeah, so what we mean is a drive towards betterment ultimately. So making the organization or the world a better place. And as our colleague Anthony talked about in a previous podcast, this cannot be a throwaway catchphrase for organizations. It's many are being called out at the moment for purpose washing, which is an inauthentic attempt to appear socially conscious. And there's building cynicism definitely around organizations' purpose straplines. Particularly for those who haven't been founded upon a key ethical principle or a key purpose that is oriented around betterment of society in some way. And so, building on this, what do we mean? We mean a true direction and underpinned by a strategy of how to get there. And we need organizations to be deeply connected to it and committed to achieving their purpose, and their leaders as well. So CEOs, managers need to be embracing the purpose, reflecting it in their decision making, seeing individuals bring their purpose to the culture. So you're kind of seeing it permeated throughout the organization. And we generally, when we've talked to businesses and leaders, seen purposes directed in a small number of directions. So whether that be towards diversity and inclusion outcomes, sustainability, climate change, but betterment in one of these directions. So an example might be asset management firms changing the way they invest towards carbon neutral investment portfolios. It might also be tobacco companies moving towards smoke-free futures. So it's basically when businesses say, what good can we do for the world? And going beyond sustainability, how do we as a business act as a global citizen? How do we use the weight of our brand to push issues that we care about?
Cool, thanks, Charlotte. And for us, we see organisation and purpose being critical, and as Charlotte mentioned earlier about the shift in societal values, and ultimately that changing quite a lot within the workforce and with society. So purpose is being demanded not just by employees, but also clients, consumers, and suppliers as well, and very much that broader society. And we know that businesses who prioritize their purpose are growing much more quickly than businesses that do not have that clear articulated purpose. And some of the examples that we've come across in terms of the shifting societal values and the impact that can have on organisations is, there's a recent survey where 91% of consumers said they'd switch to a new product if it came from a purpose-driven company. That's absolutely huge, 91%. And you can see that with some organisations, the much larger organisations, with people and consumers shifting to startups that have started with that purpose-driven concept from the get-go, and have that very much as part of their messaging, and being able to then attract consumers, but also people within the workforce too. And we know that organisation-wide, 53% of employees want their organisations to take actions on things that they personally care about. So that alignment to purpose is absolutely critical, certainly for half of the workforce, which is absolutely massive, that people want that. And that's the type of organisation they're therefore going to be applying to and attracted to working for. So that employee retention and attraction is absolutely massive in terms of this area. And it seems like the never-ending war of talent that we've heard about, we've discussed, we've shared, it's continuing. And with all of the challenges we've said around people within the workforce as well, the different generations, the different needs, the motivators, we need to be able to unify them. And one way to do that is definitely purpose. And we hear how organisations are really able to do this, and be able to bring together different people.
One interviewee in the research brought to life employees' need for purpose really nicely for me. He said, as a leader in an organization, that when he joined the workforce, his purpose, his personal purpose as an employee, was geared around making money and having job security. But that generally around him at the time was a period of stability and growth in the market. But if you look at the last few years, we've had significant political instability, the Russia, Ukraine, and Israel Palestine conflicts, a global health pandemic, the Black Lives Matter movement, increasing attention towards the state of the planet and possible consequences of business and country actions, including the potential collapse of the Gulf Stream, government bailouts, economic recessions, and now we're starting to see mass redundancies in organisations, to name a few. So people are entering the workforce now with much greater threat in their future. There's a lot more noise around them, negative noise. And they want to be part of something bigger. They want to be part of something greater, and they want to make a difference and improve the future for themselves and their future families and loved ones. And finally, we know that people are more politically aware and more critical of organisations than they ever have been before. And organisations within the purpose domain have been saying that governments are acting too slowly to tackle some of these key issues. Rather than waiting for regulations to come into play, organisations have a responsibility to take up their position in society and the level of power they have and move to make a difference, and not wait to be told ultimately.
So we've covered a lot there in terms of some of the challenges and the trends that we're seeing within organisations, what we see as purpose and what it means to us, and how we've defined that. So Charlotte, say in terms of your research, what did you find this all meant for leaders, and the types of things that they need to be doing in order to navigate these challenges?
So leaders need to do quite a few things in this space. They need to actually create this purpose, and communicate it in a clear and compelling way for people to understand and buy into. But in order to be able to create it, and input into it, they need to be very internally and externally aware of what trends and issues are important to employees, to clients, to customers now and in the future, and what challenges their business is going to face. They then need to know which one of these or more that they need to focus on, and that will really impact their business and that are authentic to them to speak about as a business as well. To really drive forward the purpose and embed it within organisations, they need to be interventionist in their approach. They need to take part in progressing it rather than delegating it out to working groups or other people within their organisation. They need to align their organisation's decisions to it, their practices, their ways of working. Teams, departments, employees ultimately need to be connected to their purpose. And leaders may be increasingly expected to express their views on broader social and political climates, where the organisation sits in relation to them, and have these conversations in a respectful and appropriate way. They need to do all of this, of course, while still creating profit, keeping shareholders happy, and ultimately improving outcomes for the business financially.
So like you say, just a few things there that we're asking of leaders, and this is just the first of our 3 pillars of what we're hoping that they'll be able to do ultimately to navigate some of those trends and challenges we spoke about. Before we finish up today, we wanted to just leave you with an example of an organisation that we've seen as really living and standing out as being a purpose-driven organisation, and they became a little bit more well-known in 2022 due to a very bold move that they made. And it's Patagonia. And for those of you who don't know, Patagonia is an outdoor clothing and gear organisation. And ultimately, since its inception, Patagonia has been all about prioritising the people and the planet, and it set itself up as very much wanting to be responsible in terms of the business and its business operating model. So it's always been very much committed to saving the planet, and this has ultimately been instrumental to its success. It never set out to make money, and it was very much about the passion for the products whilst doing this in that responsible way. And from there, it's gone from strength to strength and absolutely grown. And in addition to the purpose side of things, and as I mentioned, that 2022 piece where the founder and the CEO gave all profits moving forward to environmental causes, absolutely fantastic, and just shows in terms of the way that CEO has thought and very much set up this organisation, but actually been a really progressive organisation through its time as well, and very much thinking of people well-being, how can they get carers back into the workforce, and even in 1983 they set up on-site childcare for employees. Their cafeteria had healthy organic food, and they had an open plan office much before that they were trends to do those things. So really pioneering and progressive as an organisation. In 1993, they made their first fleece from recycled bottles, again, much before other people are doing. And we heard our colleague Anthony, who Charlotte mentioned earlier, talking about, to get various environmental stamps, and as organisations, actually, you don't really have to do very much. But here they were actually making their fleeces out of recycled bottles back in 1993. In 1996, they reduced their energy use at distribution centres by 60%. So again, very much ahead of the trend in all of what they've done. But so ultimately, they've really, really grown as an organisation, and in 2017, their revenue surpassed the $1 billion mark. And this is an organisation that never set out to make money and just wanted to make responsible clothing and climbing products. But doing so in such a purpose-led, driven way that's underpinned their decision-making and their growth has really made them inspirational as a brand and as an employer, and therefore attracted the talent and attracted the consumers as well.
A great example to bring to life what we mean by purpose, which can at times be quite an abstract topic. We hope you've enjoyed today. Next time we're going to go through our other 2 pillars in our model, so agility and people, and look forward to taking you through those. See you next time.
So thank you for listening to our podcast, New Ways, New Habits.
To find out future release dates, follow us on LinkedIn, and you can find all future podcasts on Spotify, SoundCloud and Apple. We really are the whole package.
And it wouldn't be right without saying, don't forget to provoke, plant and practice these new ways and new habits.